December the 26th, 11 PM. Oh, they're subject to tail breaking sessions. Having myself stripped away, officers committing crime against my ability to think for myself. They've internalised my power over my own life according to what they've done. My ability to think for myself or drive over my own life, they're relativising through it all day because they've internalised my ability to think for myself. It means I'm in a complete brain dead, mindless state, having officers 200 times a day relativise what they want while stripping away my drive over my own life. In other words, the drive you've got to get up and get on with your life, they've internalised it using the institutionalisation process, and they relativise what they want, stripping away every day, over 10 years by the way, not over 1 hour, every single day, up to 200 times a day, every day for 12 years. I'm living in a tent. It's just getting worse and worse. Every time I get employed, I'm subject to internal breaking sessions. Every time every day. It's not just one isolated incident or one particular institute or area or aspect where this occurs. It's just 200 times a day every day to make somebody unfit to work and eventually completely institutionalised so they can keep them in a robotic state in prison, and they can commit crime against them internally as a punch bag and just blame mental health or drug use. It's a simple. I've seen people in jail in a complete brain dead robotic state because they've internalised the power or the drive over their own life or control over their own life or their ability to think for themselves. They've stripped away every single bit of it or internalised it, and they're in a robotic state with their entire life internalised, with officers committing crimes against humanity against them internally. In other words, they internalise your ability to think for yourself and keep you in a robotic controlled state in prison and commit crime against you internally. They'll blame drug use, mental illness or other. They commit crime against humanity, against you, relativising homosexuality, relativising. You end up in a robotic state with thousands, if not tens of thousands, of, when I say relativisations, I mean re-imprintings or reintegrations or remappings or whatever else. This is, they end up with their entire life internalised and is in a robotic state, reprogrammed as such, with tens of thousands of relativisations for their own officers' personal gratification. So they'll pull out your sex, just a basic idea or a basic example. They'll strip away your sex drives and then internally they'll relativise or re-imprint or reprogram homosexuality all day. And so your life then gets consumed or taken over. You've sacrificed your life every day of your life to be used as a punch bag for these individual officers, usually detective constables or probation officers, to mess around all day. So you end up losing your life, or the individual loses their life, to have officers committing crime against them internally. You've then sacrificed your life and given your life to them to commit crime against you, like you've not got better things to do. They internalise your power. So I haven't got, if I wanted to go out and get on with my life now, I've not got the drive to do it. If I wanted to go out and get a girlfriend, I've not got any sex drive to do it because they've internalised it all. And they relativised with that power they've done, they've internalised it with that drive, internalised it so that they can commit crime against me internally. They've then got jurisdiction and designate where my natural life goes internally. My quality of life's poor. Like, the feelings, emotions or sensitivity the normal person will get regarding sexual relations or regarding relationships that could potentially bring offspring, non-existent to me. I have no recognition what that is. I don't know what that is. The feeling's desensitised entirely, or I haven't got any familiar feelings or similar. I haven't got any recognition of what it is. I cannot figure out or depict what that could potentially be, because they've internalised it all and they've relativised thousands and thousands of relativisations. Officers randomly, coincidentally, drive past me in the street, see me in supermarkets, and that's where it's all gone internally, and I haven't got any feelings in it. In other words, my marriage or my children's gone because they've internalised it into homosexuality and random officers that are coincidentally bumping into me in parks, streets and supermarkets. That's what they're saying it is. It's the biggest load of shit. It's going into random... I'm walking to work, and within 3 times of going to work, it's going into 3 random black blokes coincidentally walking to work at 5 and 6 in the morning. They take your life off you and use your punch tag as a social experiment every day, controlling every aspect of your life is their job. I'm now sat here at 11 o'clock at night with my entire life in turn, with officers relativising sorry into every time I've been rejected by a female, every time a female's gone and slept with another man, every time one of my family's died, and every time I've been assaulted. They've rubber banded it or internalised it into interactions with detective constables and the relativising sorry in my ability to think for myself. That's because they're using the institutionalisation process to commit human punch bags. It is illegal. They've internalised I'm in a critical condition, days away from being 32-year-old, because they're humiliating my power internally, relativising sorry, stripping away myself. They've internalised my drive and control of my own life, so that I haven't got control of my own life in a robotic state, in an institutional self, and they're humiliating my power internally, relativising sorry. So I've now been institutionalised every day, costing me every single day of my life in a controlled state, with officers committing crime against me internally, and it's just getting worse and worse. I'm now laid here on December the 22nd. I've not slept properly in weeks, potentially months. I've not been in the gym in weeks, potentially months. With my drives over my own life internalising, officers humiliating my drives internally, relativising sorry, stripping away the power of my own life. So I'm just getting more and more institutionalised. They're just gathering their own evidence, their own synthetic evidence. This has been going on now every minute or every day for 8 years. My quality of life's being pulled out. I'm in a full brain dead state, losing it, just being used as a punch bag. That's the conclusion of it. I'm being used as a punch bag by officers because they're getting away with putting whatever they want through the system. And if they don't rationalise what they want through the system, they'll just go out and get it in a controlled state. They'll force me into signs of mental illness, they'll force me into drug use, they'll force me into criminality in a controlled state and put it in the system themselves. In other words, they're entitled to do what they want with their power in the system at my expense. So people in the public or members of the public have got to get in the system and stop detective constables and probation officers gathering their own evidence and using institutionalisation however they want. If they can't control somebody or use them as a punch bag or torture them, they'll just use them in a controlled state and gather their own evidence. They'll get them into drug use, torture them and blame the drugs. They'll torture them and blame the mental illness. They'll force them into criminality that there's got nothing to do with them whatsoever and use it against them and keep possession of that way. If they've not got jurisdiction or rights to get into somebody's institutional self and commit crime against them, they'll do it anyway and control them into crime. Once they're in crime, they're incriminated. They'll use it against you in the system and tell the individual they've got to get a solicitor. Either way, I'm in critical condition, December 26th. Stripping away the self, still continuing, pulling out all the drives over my own life. I'm still living in a tent. I've been here for 18 months, it's just getting worse and worse. Unemployed now for 5 years. No sexual relations in ever. Still not being sexually active whatsoever in 6 years. In other words, I've not completed sexual intercourse in 6 years. Never been in a sexual relationship. Not being employed permanently now in 5 years, and now living in a tent, and it's coming up to 18 months. It's about to be 18 months. In a couple of days, it'll be in the 18th month of homelessness, and the brain dead state's getting worse and worse because they're humiliating me internally and degrading me internally with internal accusations, relativising sorry, should have gone guilty, and liar, breaking down the sessions, and they're relativising these relativisations in an institutional self through every time I've been assaulted, which is over 50 times. every time one of my family's passed away, or every time an unpleasant or unfortunate accident's happened, which is hundreds of occasions. So they've created their own internal punchbag to relativise their own perverted fantasies against me internally. To relativise liar, should have gone guilty, and sorry. In other words, they've opened an institutional self many years ago, sculpted my life or controlled every day of my life into over 50 assaults that had nothing to do with my life, prevented me having sexual relations with over 50 women that had nothing to do with my life, hundreds of occasions of unfortunate accidents, just frequently bombarded with accusations, incriminated, humiliated, degraded, where you've been left humiliated and degraded in a controlled state on hundreds of occasions, sometimes sexually, sometimes against your rights. They've internalised all that, and now they're using me. Once it's internalised, they relativise through that feeling and blame mental illness and say that you're being bullied, or that drug use has done it, or external factors have done it in your childhood. In other words, they sculpt their own story in your life to create what they want to create. So if I've been assaulted on over 50 occasions in a controlled state, they'll now say that I'm being bullied, and internally they're relativising sorry for it every day. In other words, they've done it, the officers have done it in a controlled state, in a controlled life. In a controlled state, I've been controlled or used for 50 assaults by officers, mostly by known prisoners or known criminals themselves, that they can get the satisfaction out of using somebody in a controlled state to have the power humiliated or the masculinity degraded by getting them physically assaulted and humiliated or incriminated, and then they use it against you internally and relativise sorry through it. Should have gone guilty or liar, so that I'm now enduring internal breaking sessions by officers that they'll say I've been bullied, they'll say that I'm weak-minded. They're just committing crime against you. In summary, they've created their own punchbag over 15 to 17 years. They opened an institutional self where they've got control over my behaviour in life, gone into every aspect of my human rights with full jurisdiction to control every interaction, every aspect of my life, and controlled every day, which has ended up with 50 assaults, victim of 50 assaults, victims of theft, victim of frequent lack of sick to all these accusations from the job centres, schools, councils, work, all of them constant. They've made it their job to bombard me with accusations all day using institutionalisation, or frequently have unfortunate accidents, so that they can internalise that, the degrading or humiliating aspect to it, and bombard me accusations internally in an institutional self, physically relativising should have gone guilty, sorry, which is some of the most critical torture. It's a crime against humanity. Every day I get myself stripped away in a critical condition, severe pain and agony, with officers relativising their own perverted fantasies, which is physical, it's not mental. They blame mental illness, they blame drug use, they blame external factors like bullying, they blame disabilities, mental ailments, biggest load of rubbish I've ever seen. An institutional self is the main concept of human society, it's the way that British society works. But once you're mentally ill or go to jail, they can add additional measures or additional features to an institutional self, or what I class as control. The way that society is controlled, or the way that the humans are controlled, especially in the UK, is very regulated. But these officers feel as though they've got full jurisdiction to control somebody however they want, for criminality purposes, mental illness purposes, or other or similar. In other words, they've opened an institutional self at an early age, around 13-year-old, and they've created their own punchbag sculpting my life every day. They've used me to get assaulted over 50 times. They've cost me what I claim sexual relations with over 50 women by internalising my sex drives. They've also forced me into potentially hundreds of events of humiliating, degrading or incriminating. They've internalised all those feelings, and now for the last 4 or 5 years, but over 8 years, internally they've bombarded me with accusations relativising rubbish, their own fantasies, into it. So all those times where I've been humiliated, degraded or incriminated, they've internalised all that. they've created their own punch bag with my life internally, misusing the psychological process, misusing the physical process, misusing the build-up of the human being in British society, which is the way that society is working. They've sculpted their own punch bag in a controlled state, their own tailored personal punch bag, where they can squash their own insecurities, they can fulfill their own fantasies, to blame drug use, mental illness, or external factors like bullying, for example. They'll say that I've got bloodlines that are prone to bullying, which is that they've made up themselves. So as a member of the public, you could have full clean genetics like what I've got, with no liability or prone to be a victim of crime, that's got full clean power bloodlines, and because that detective constable or that officer can't get power over it himself, he'll misuse information in the system and say that you're prone to bullying, and then go into your life and use you in a controlled state, or you will be used in a controlled state to be attacked frequently like I am. So that I've now been a victim of over 50 attacks where I haven't been able to act or do anything about it, where I've been left emasculated, humiliated or degraded, with my power jeopardised, and that's so that they can internalise it and commit crime against you like what I'm going through now. So in summary, I'm days away from being 32-year-old, and every single day for 8 years I've been subject to internal breaking sessions and officers fulfilling their own personal fantasies, or in using my institutional self tailored solely to squash their own insecurities. All the 50 times that I've been controlled into assault zone or relativising sorry through it, it means that they've fulfilled their own perverted fantasies to get prowess, power or masculinity or drive over somebody, so that they've humiliated somebody, they've killed they've demolished somebody's rights. They don't care, they've committed crime against you, so they're not going to be bothered about, they won't be bothered about anything, because they've got you assaulted over 50 times, they've got you humiliated where you can't do anything about it. They've got you in a controlled state, they've had me in a controlled state, getting physically humiliated and preventing me doing anything about it. It means I've had my masculinity jeopardised by officers in a controlled state, and they're relativising sorry through it. I've been prevented from what I claim sexual relations with over 50 women on the fact they've internalised my sex drives, and at a young age they pulled that much power out, I end up gaining excessive weight, which is a additional drawback to having 50 women. It's also the fact that every single girlfriend I've ever had, or every single woman that I ever speak to, randomly disappears or randomly goes and sleeps with somebody else, constantly bombarded with unlikely, very, very extremely rare and unpleasant happenings where a woman would sleep with somebody else when you're speaking to her. And I could never figure out, there's not a chance on this planet that my masculinity, I've always known my entire life my masculinity would never ever succumb to such degrading or emasculating incidents where a woman would go and sleep with somebody else whilst you're in the talking phase, or potentially more. And it's happened, what I claim, potentially over 50 times. And it's the degrading system, the detective constables and South Yorkshire Police, and I'm not saying that people are conspiring against me. It's on the basis that this is a reoccurring, frequent happening as to where I've been degraded, which is mortification of self for in prisons. This happens in prisons. It shouldn't be happening in the public. It's where you're having your life controlled and you're having crime committed against you to create a human punch bag. And the final concluding, obviously, final ending of what they're doing, or the final conclusion, is just a human punch bag. Now they've internalised every time I've been assaulted, and every single time that I've been rejected by a female, every single time one of my family's died prematurely, randomly, or every time that I've had an unfortunate accident happen, like what I've been putting videos online frequently, where I'm getting thrown out of jobs, randomly thrown out of job centres, gyms, I'm getting bombarded with accusations and incriminated in every day of my life. All that's been internalised, and now they're relativising their own insecurities or perverted fantasies, saying relativising sorry. So when I've been in society, they're relativising sorry, humiliating, stripping away myself, relativising sorry. I'm not saying that people are conspiring, I'm not saying that they're communicating, I'm not saying that this is a big conspiracy or people are trying to harm me or anything like that. I'm saying that the institutional self is a 100% physical concept that's on everybody in society. And when you're classed as mentally ill, disabled, criminalised or other, officers feel as though they've got full jurisdiction to do what they want. But the fact is, these officers are tailoring institutional selves to suit their own insecurities that's got nothing to do with the individual's life. There is nothing in my genetics, or shouldn't be anything in my genetics, that's saying that I'm prone to bullying or any kind of attacks. So whatever information they're putting in there has obviously got me assaulted over 50 times in a controlled state, because they're rationalising their own behaviour, their own control. I've even got an offence at a young age. This started at a very young age, where I'm being assaulted or attacked and I'm being prevented physically from doing anything about it, when I know that they can't get on my power. I know that I've got the masculinity or power to just drive through and fight back, or I've got the power to not even get assaulted, whatever audacity. I've always known my entire life in these 50 assaults that 95% of them haven't even got the audacity or power to get the imposition. So the officers are letting random people have impositions on my power to humiliate me, and I've always known they've never had the jurisdiction to do it. I've always known in 50 assaults where I've been prevented from doing anything about it and my masculinity has been jeopardised, the individual or the perpetrator didn't have the sufficient power to get the imposition. It means they didn't get they just get bored off. They won't get the power. They just get left. They won't have the power to get on it. They won't even have give them the confidence to think they can physically assault me. Is not something I've given them. It's against the societal norms. It's against natural society, because I've got full clean power bloodlines, and there's not a chance on earth they can get a entitlement on it. But officers have been said that they're giving people controlled lives and allowing people to do that. But whatever information they've been putting in the system, then it's not true to natural life. It's not true to form, because you're getting people that have got lesser bloodlines than mine, less powerful bloodlines, getting on full power bloodlines, which should not happen. They wouldn't get on full clean genetics. You've not got a chance. So I've been left with full power emasculated by people that are of lesser power than myself, so that they can degrade me and humiliate me as officers. Same as and it's the same concept or same reality with women. There's not a chance on this planet I would ever speak to a female and offer her adoration or or have any kind of feelings for her, and then she'd just randomly, with no given reason, against my power or masculinity, go and sleep with somebody. Usually with what has been known in prisons, especially, where it degrades the individual. It's degrading the masculinity, it's degrading their sexual prowess, where the female is sleeping with other males, and it's in the biological genetic makeup of the human being. So they're having involvement in stuff way too powerful for what they are, these officers. They're forcing people into physical assaults over 50 times, being left degraded, and also forcing the relations with females and forcing them to cheat. But I'm telling you, I'm making the claim that I'm not claiming, actually. I know for a fact in my life when it's happening that it's third party intervention. I know that it's third party elsewhere getting involved, because it's blatantly obvious. There's not a chance on this planet that I'd lose power to people that I'm getting assaulted by in 10 million years. I could never figure out where they've got the audacity or confidence to do it from. And it's the same as females. I've never found out. There's not a chance on this planet that these women would ever decline me or ever reject any kind of relations or turn their nose up at relations with my clean bloodlines and then go and sleep with somebody else ever in a million years. Would my masculinity be jeopardised like that? I've always known that. I've always known that for my entire life, but I could never figure out what the problem is. Like, I could never, beyond Earth itself, like it's almost beyond what Earth could ever be. It's beyond social life, it's beyond social interaction or power. It's for the higher gods. Find out it's detective constables and probation officers committing crime against you to create an internal punch bag. You'll never believe it. It's the most illegal thing ever. There is not a chance. Like I said, I'm subject to 50 assaults by powerless scroats or get rejected by females and have my masculinity jeopardised so they sleep with another man, ever. And I've always known that. So now that it's obviously been made apparent that it's officers creating a human punch bag with my life to bombard me with accusations to fulfil their own fantasies or their own insecurities, relativising sorry for 50 assaults where my masculinity has been jeopardised, or 50 occasions where females have slept with another a male on my masculinity. It's illegal, fulfilling their own insecurities, as well as the homosexual acts. They force me into homosexual role plays in a controlled state to fulfill their own sexual prowess. So that means I've also been forced into sexual degrading and sexual humiliation, where I've been forced into humiliating or degrading perverted sex acts against my will in a controlled state, the same as the assaults. And it's because the officers want to degrade you or humiliate you, forcing you into sex crimes to get their own perverted fantasies. I know why, or I'll have a good guess why. That's because they're sleeping around in the system and they've been told they can fulfill their own fantasies at people's expense. In other words, they're creating a big scene in the system between police, probation and the lower professional bracket, sleeping around on their husbands and wives, creating deviant sexual subcults with each other, and they're wanting to force members of the public to live by that rule. Then people like me that have got their own lives are then forced in a controlled state into perverted sex acts against my will that are committing crime against me, that's humiliating or degrading, forcing into dirty sex acts. Disgusting homosexual role plays where the individuals are getting power or prowess by using another human being in a controlled state to commit perverted sex acts, whether it's homosexual or not. That means you're left degraded with your masculinity and sexuality degraded or humiliated by officers. That's because they're crushing their own insecurities in somebody's life because they're manking about its system on power over every single crime they've created and every single suicide that's been manufactured synthetically. That's because they're doing what they want, creating their own deviant subcultures to where they're the middle class and people are mentally ill. They're mentally ill and they're not mentally ill. That's the deviant subculture that these probation officers and police officers have created while they're manking about and sleeping about on their wives and husbands and whatever else. They're now expecting people like me to pick up the burden of their sins or their sexual promiscuous behaviour and now get forced into homosexual role plays and sexual degrading where I'm forced into humiliating sex acts and sexual deviance where I'm forced into humiliating acts. It's disgusting. Either way, to conclude, because this could go on for quite some time. December the 26th, I'm days away from my 32nd birthday. I've been in a critical condition now for over 8 years and it's about to go into the 9th year. No education of a relevant standard still at 32-year-old. Not a chance on this planet I'll ever get a mortgage. Not a chance on this planet I'll ever get a girlfriend because they've internalised my sex drives. Being humiliated internally with officers relativising their own fantasies because they've manipulated an institutional self to cause critical agony all day. They're using me as a human punch bag every single day, stripping away their self, fulfilling their own insecurities, their own perverted fantasies. I've not slept in weeks properly. I've not been in the gym in weeks or months properly. No job since 2019 of a permanent standard, apart from a couple of days here or there, which is now, I've not even done a couple of days in years. No sign of marriage and no sign of a holiday at this point, so I can't get into work, and I'm about to get signed off the job centre as well because they're randomly throwing me out of the job centre and incriminating me, funnily enough, like every other aspect of my life. I'm walking in the job centre, they're throwing me straight out, they've done it numerous times. They're proclaiming I'm arguing with and being rude. I've just had enough, so I'm going to sign off. I'm sick to death of being incriminated in every aspect of life. I go to work, I get incriminated. I get told I'm not fit to work in every single job I've ever had, randomly, out of conform, never seen anything out of conform in my life. I go to the job centre, I'm getting bombarded with accusations that I'm rude, not said anything wrong whatsoever. There's been no swearing, there's been nothing to really suggest that I've been rude. But all of this will be reported and used in the system to portray me as a mentally ill criminal that's crazed, unfit to work and capable of being institutionalised. In other words, every aspect of my life, or my life's controlled in conjunction with being a human punch bag. I get thrown out of job centres, get thrown out of jobs, get thrown off council lists, get thrown out of shops, get thrown out of gyms, get thrown out of the libraries, barred me randomly for no apparent reason, saying that I've been looking at inappropriate stuff. Frequent incrimination, freak every day. Like the other day, I made a video about walking to get some food. This is every single day. So, in conclusion, not slept properly in weeks, potentially mum's not been in the gym weeks, potentially mum's in a critical condition still, about to go into the 9th year, being humiliated internally, still being used as a human punch bag, causing severe pain and agony. It's a crime against humanity, without a doubt, 100% crime against humanity for detective constables and probation officers misusing the institutional self to create their own human punch bag tailored for their own insecurities and their own messing about. 100% illegal.